I'm just gonna get my camera.
We can interview it too. Welcome, everybody. We have with us today the most famous of all Albanian stand-up lady comedians, and perhaps even of all Albanian comedians, Leonarda Jonie. How are you?
Great. I don't think I'm the most famous Albanian comedian because we had Jim
There's.
Belushi.
Oh, okay. Well, you got me. Dang.
Yeah,
Spitting
his
facts.
brother. His brother John's the one that got killed, right? Or was it Jim?
Yeah. So you're over here snopesing me before we've even gotten into it. Fact checking. So Leonarda, how long have you been doing stand-up?
It'll be 5 years in April.
What was your absolute worst stand-up experience event?
I would say it's probably there's a lot. When you're starting, you just kind of take any kind of gig you get. But I would say my worst one was probably doing a rooftop in Brooklyn, and I was doing my kind of comedy, and there was this like
Was it a synagogue rooftop? Were you up there on top of a
no,
synagogue?
no, it was worse. There was like this lesbian biracial couple in front of me who you could tell were like these Afro punk communists. And they were just not having it with my trans jokes. And like they wanted to fight me afterward. And I was like, okay, they're jokes, guys. And you wouldn't get so upset if I wasn't hitting on the truth. So
Yeah. We did a event in Austin not too long ago, and we had a great crowd. I think we had 120 people there, but I just simply did some soulful black singing, and we had a black couple leave. So I think it was
I mean,
I think it was envy. I think they were jealous of the pipes, but could have been other reasons. I don't know. But you do get that, don't you? You get these sort of like angry audience people.
you get people who get upset. A lot of people have been conditioned to get offended at just certain words or phrases. They're not even really listening to the joke, because if they were listening to the joke, they would realize there was nothing really offensive about it. And I'm just highlighting things that are ridiculous. But that's the problem. You can't highlight things that are ridiculous because we need to believe the lie. And so, they're really, really well trained puppets. I like to call them NPCs because and anybody can be an NPC and anybody can be woken up out of the NPC meme. But, I was an NPC, just so people know. I was a person who used to parrot things that were told to me and just say them. And eventually I got woken up and I had nice friends who would wake me up. But if you're an NPC, you just know to react to certain words and phrases, and you're not even really thinking at that point.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about pretty deep, heavy stuff to do with mind control and CIA, MK Ultra projects and all that. And I think that they took a lot of those studies and just kind of applied them to the public in general, and it worked fantastically. Like because most of the public is pretty much unfortunately brainwashed. A lot of people are waking up though. So do you notice this at your, because you seem to be, what I've gathered is that you're pretty red pilled, not in the gender sense, but red pilled in the conspiracy sense of like based in your approach to comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm red pilled across the board.
Okay.
I'm red pilled on the gender stuff that we've been taught. That's a lie. I'm red pilled on the way our society is structured, our financial system, religion. I'm red pilled across the board. Once you start to unravel one thing, they all kind of start to fall
Yes.
apart. And it's a difficult process because there's things you hang on to longer than other things, especially if stuff in your life conforms with the lie. And the waking up process is like you're at war with yourself. There's a part of you that's starting to see the truth, and there's a part of you that's still living your life out of the lie. And so it can be pretty difficult. But so my approach to comedy is to tell the truth and make it funny, and kind of to like jar people a little bit. I would say I'm sort of more in the Patrice O'Neill school of comedy, where it's like a real divide the room kind of comedian. You got like half the people love me, half the people want to kill me, and I'm having a good time the whole way. So
Are you trying to say you agree with Joan Rivers talking about my wife being Big Mike? So what you're trying to say? You're trying to say you're a Joan Rivers fan?
Love Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was awesome, you know?
Do you agree with her about Big Mike?
I think it's totally possible. I think one of my friends, he's a black gay Republican conspiracy theorist. I mean, you don't get any better than that. And he, first of all, recently he goes, I think I was psyoped into being gay, which is hilarious to me. And then secondly, he told me that he has been telling me for a long time that a lot of these celebrities that were made to worship are trans and that they've been transitioning people way before that we know.
I feel like I've been psyoped into actually believing this. Like my wife and Alex Jones they've said so many times that they think Michelle's a dude that I'm starting to think that now I actually believe this. So I think I've been reverse mind controlled to believe the conspiracy, but it does seem after a while you start looking at all these people and it's like I actually think it's funny, right? Because it's a hilarious way to troll everybody in legacy celebritydom. Like I had somebody saying, "Oh, Megan Fox is a dude," and it's like now I can't unsee it. It's like now I see everyone as a dude. Anyway.
Well, there's a whole humiliation ritual behind Hollywood putting in front of you what is a man, what they all know is a man, and having a bunch of young dudes, excuse my French, but masturbate to them or get off to them and like think they're so hot. And then the people behind the scenes are like, you're gay, they know there's a whole trolling element there.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked a lot about this whole humiliation ritual. In fact, Cat Williams kind of admitted this a couple weeks ago on Rogan, admitted it again kind of on in that interview with Shay Shay. And I don't know if you saw that, but that's kind of like massive interview, like 80 million views on the first interview. And he's talking about how
It's Shay Shay?
Yeah, where he's like, it's a ritual, okay? It's a ritual. They doing rituals. They not going up in my booty hole, right? Did you see that?
I saw parts of it.
Okay, the whole thing is worth watching because, again, I feel like the conspiracy world is vindicated once again. I mean, he basically says P. Diddy's like a mini Epstein, you know what I mean? Like, did you hear about all that?
Yes.
So,
yeah. I heard, I mean, I've known about Diddy for a while, actually.
well, it's just interesting to have like more and more confirmations or people coming out kind of saying similar stuff. The rumors have been around for a while, with a lot of this stuff, but I think it speaks to what you're saying about the process of, Hollywood humiliating people kind of before they raise you to the next level. Would you agree with that? You think that's plausible?
So I agree, and I think it's a double humiliation. They're humiliating the people that they raise up, but they're also humiliating you, the viewer, because they know what they're doing and you have no idea. And they kind of tell you in certain ways, like becoming Michelle, right? Becoming Michelle Obama. Like, what does that actually mean? And then the other thing you have to realize is this is not beyond there. Like, I think a lot of us are so normal and morally grounded, and we have these morals that guide our behavior, that we would never conduct ourselves in this way or with other people, that it is hard to imagine that there are people who behave in this manner. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever gotten into an encounter in any significant way with a sociopath or a psychopath. They do things that you couldn't fathom doing. And so while they're doing it, it doesn't occur to you that they might be doing these things because you would never behave in this way. Like, I've had an experience with one who was such a pathological liar that he would make up lies about things that didn't even matter, didn't even exist, and would be lying to me like right in front of my face. And I had no clue because I don't behave that way. And so we have to stop projecting our moral system
Yeah.
onto people who do not follow that. These people, in a lot of ways, are structurally evil. They live by a totally different moral code. They do not care for our moral codes. They think that we're stupid for having these moral codes and that they're here to be exploited. And our foolishness of assuming the same level, with those people gets us in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's this sort of blind spot of projecting the idea that, well, I could never conceive of operating that way. So clearly, zillionaire people who say they want to kill everybody also wouldn't operate that way, even though they say they want to
Even tell you to your
kill.
face.
Yeah.
I will just say this other part too that people like really need to understand is that this has been going on from the beginning of Hollywood. I believe that Hollywood was always a government created organization, that the point of Hollywood was always to brainwash and slowly start to change the American mindset. And I know this because I actually love old movies. It's a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yeah, my
I
wife
love
and
to
I
go
too.
back.
We do too.
I love to go back and watch old Hollywood movies, but I see in them the beginnings of the degradation of culture because I have the eyes to see now, which is not, of course, with all of them, but most of them, I start to see the things that we would kind of laugh at now because, we have, wet ass pussy on the radio, but things like them putting a woman front and center in this sexual manner and she's doing a provocative dance. That was not part of the American culture before that time. Things like a woman answering the door in a scene in her towel, which right now, might be like, oh, that's nothing. That was a scam. You were starting to break down the moral values. And you might think, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that you're starting to objectify women in this way. And that is the beginning of the porn epidemic that we have now. Because you can't get to the porn epidemic if you can't show a woman in her towel or a woman in her bra or imply a sexual scene in a movie.
Yeah, do you know about the Hays Code? Are you familiar with that?
No, what's the Hays Code?
So basically, if you watch that movie Babylon with Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt, it kind of tracks the history of Hollywood from the pre-Hays Code slash silent era, and then when it moves into the talkies, they begin to quickly put in place morality codes. And so there was a push at that time by Catholics to get a morality code in Hollywood. And this is why you would see for maybe like the later 30s, 40s, and 50s, you would see like two beds, like husband and wives don't sleep together. And in my opinion, that's a little extreme, but it was there to combat what you're talking about, which was that prior to the Hays Code, it was like they were doing some pretty wild stuff in the talkies days because there was no rules on what you could show in film. Then they put in rules, and then the rules had to gradually get eroded through what you're talking about, this sort of slow social engineering model. So you're absolutely right. And from the earliest days of Hollywood as well, they're intimately tied to the military establishment, to propaganda, and then to intelligence agencies, the OSS, CIA. They worked on many, many films way before Argo and Zero Dark 30. So I think you're spot on there. Yeah, you sound like you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on for sure.
Well, look at Psycho, right? Psycho terrified people.
Yeah, that was British intelligence was studying that, and Hitchcock was doing propaganda work for the Ministry of Information and British intelligence. So not only was he,
I actually got into a fight with somebody I used to date because I told him, I was like, I don't watch horror. There's certain things that I don't watch. And I intentionally don't watch them because I don't like my emotions to be manipulated. And this person was like, no, you have to watch them. You have to expose yourself. You're being a baby. And I was like, I'm not being a baby because I know exactly what they're doing. They want to bring me on this, whatever emotion. It's not like horror movies. They want to terrify me. Why am I going to let them pump adrenaline through my system for something that's not even happening? Number one. Number two, all these like drama pieces that bring almost this kind of traumatic thing front and center. Like there's a movie about like, I guess these two kids getting abducted and basically like by a pedophile or whatever. I don't want to go through that emotional experience. I know that stuff happens, and my heart, they're in my heart for these people. But why do I need to put myself through that experience through an artificial format? It's a manipulation of your emotions, and we never really thought about what we were consuming before this sort of grand awakening that's happening and what it's doing to your body. Like when you experience these emotions, your body literally floods you with these chemicals and you can get addicted to that internal chemical system. And so you can keep going back for more thrillers or more dramatic pieces. And then, this way of living, it's not correct. And so I like to watch things that make me feel good or that have a good story. And so usually I'm not watching anything recent, or I'm screening them, or, like my favorite two of my favorite movies are The Bishop's Wife with Cary Grant. It's just a beautiful movie. I don't know if you know that
Yeah, I
movie.
do. We've seen every 40s, 50 Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart. We watched all those. Yeah.
God, love that. I love Arsenic and Old Lace. It's so funny. And then the other one that I love is It's a Wonderful Life, right? That was just talk about a beautiful movie with a beautiful message that was anti-materialism, that talked about this guy who kept thinking that he had to go make all this money and everything, and then he, at the end of his life, he realizes what a fulfillment. This is the one where he like jumps in the river, right, and tries to kill himself, and then the angel saves him. Am I thinking about the right one?
Yeah. Basically, what you're saying is you want Joan Crawford in blackface. That's what you're saying.
Was that the one there? She had blackface.
She's in one goofy movie in black. I think there's a musical she did, which it's notoriously lampooned because it makes no sense. But in one scene in the musical, she comes out like singing in blackface. It makes no sense. But some of those 40s movies had that, and it's like, I don't know. You watch these 40s movies, and it's like it's just odd that how different even Hollywood from the 40s to the 50s becomes. Like you can,
Yeah.
there's like wholesomeness, but at the same time, you can pretty freely lampoon a lot of things. And they would even make fun of gay people in the 40s movies, but they would always imply it because you couldn't explicitly say it. But like if you watch Maltese Falcon, the Peter Lorre character, oh yes, Rick, oh yeah, he's actually gay. And I never realized this until the last time I watched it. And it's like he's talking about my perfume, like his perfume scents on his gloves, and he's clearly gay. But when I was a kid, teenager, because I'm a big movie buff, I didn't realize he's supposed to be a gay character. Then you go back and watch it, it's like, oh, he's the gay dude, and they're making me. And Rick like backhands him. He like bitch pimp slaps him and knocks him back, and it's like, man, that would never fly. We were watching a freaking '90s independent film with Reese Witherspoon, and she's like going off calling somebody N-word, and I'm like, man, that would never fly today. If somebody finds that you could totally like hold her hostage by like, I've got clips from your '90s movie, I'm gonna put it on Twitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there was like a subversion of the culture, I think, beginning even as early as then. But you still can find these kind of movies with some sort of wholesome message, but they're not going to come from a mainstream studio, and they certainly aren't doing anything funny. And that's why the comedy genre has completely died, because to be funny, you have to risk offending someone.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, to be funny, you have to tell the truth. And right now, we live in a culture of complete deception and lies, where
Absolutely.
everything that's being pushed is completely false. It's not true. It's a false narrative. And so you cannot make a comedy in that climate.
Yeah, I think they intentionally knew they would have to shut down comedy because comedy is one of those domains where it's expected, it's understood that you're going to say whatever's on your mind, right? So it's kind of like this last little domain of free speech where they knew they would have to really implement the cancel culture. And so, yeah, I wanted to get your take on that. You actually answered my next question. I was going to ask you, like, what is your philosophy of comedy? What is fun? What is funny? Is it something that has the truth in it as its seed that you're sort of planting there?
Yeah, almost always. I mean, I think you have different kinds of comedy. Obviously the kind of comedy that I like is the dangerous comedy, the kind of comedy that puts people on edge, makes them uncomfortable. But they're going to laugh because they recognize it, or they're going to try and not laugh because they're afraid. But that's my kind of comedy. I like the Norm Macdonalds, I like Patrice O'Neill, I like the Rosie O'Donnell, the back then when she really was subversive, the Roseannes, like the Joan Rivers, the Phyllis Diller. These people are the people that I like. Then you have kind of like wacky comedy, which is fun, that can be fun. Like, I'd say Robin Williams fell into that category, and he was fun and funny and enjoyable. And he definitely did some kind of like little subtle truth bombs, which were fun. But there you have a kind of Jim Carrey with his early stuff, although later on, right, you see Jim Carrey starting to do truth in the comedy, right? And so that's him. I don't particularly enjoy that. I like every once in a while I like to go see that just for like a change of pace. And I like to kind of sprinkle that in to lighten things up for people, but it's just not the way my brain works. My brain constantly I'm more of a philosophically oriented person anyway. And so I'm looking for the truth. And so what's happening to me is I'm looking at society and I'm going, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Here's why it's ridiculous. Great. Let's make fun of it. And sometimes you do it badly. Sometimes you just do it in a way it's not even funny and it's just offensive. But that's part of the process to figuring out how to make it funny.
Yeah, that's well said. I think I wanted to ask you about your clip here. I noticed, I agree with you in your little clip here about aliens. Aliens are faking gay. I've been saying this for a long time. They've traveled light years to get here to basically do butt stuff, to touch butts and worse. To me, yeah, I mean, this
0%. Just a little bit of logic, people, would help you understand that you're being lied to.
Yeah, I think Aliens is a huge deception, and they've been pushing this, particularly through Hollywood, since the 40s and 50s. We even know some of the high-level CIA people that were involved in pushing the alien mythos in Hollywood, like C.D. Jackson. So I like that you did this piece basically saying that people are retorted if they believe in aliens. What makes you not believe in aliens? Haven't you seen all of the clips and the whistleblowers talking about back engineering the craft?
No, I'll tell you what made me not believe in them. As soon as the government started telling us they were real.
There you go. Yeah, so once the government says it, we know it's this bullshit.
Hillary Clinton said they're real. As soon as that bitch said they're real, I was like, okay, she'll never tell us the truth about anything. So that's a lie. Obama saying that they were real, I was like, that's a lie. And then I read Father Seraphim Rose's book about, it was called Orthodoxy.
Oh wow, you read that? Okay. Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Are you Orthodox? I was going to ask you that.
I actually am. I converted last year. I do struggle with my faith. So before anybody like holds me up as a poster child of Orthodoxy, please don't. I'm always in the process of coming in and coming out. I do my best, but in general, I think my faith is in God and, trusting that a higher power has me, and that my sensation is Orthodox Christianity is the most aligned with what I believe is true. Not even with what I believe is true. I just think with the truth. That doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with everything in it, because there's stuff in there that's like difficult, like especially Old Testament stuff, when like God tells, the tribes to go like kill whole villages. I'm like, okay, it's a little weird. This is a little weird for me. And so I can see how that could be a man-made thing to justify certain behavior. And so I'm always skeptical and aware of where man may have interjected his need for justifying his behavior into the religion versus finding out what's true. And I can't seem to escape that there seems to be a recognition in me of Christ and the story of Christ, and this love, this unbelievable love for me from God in many ways that is hard to run away from or deny. And I don't want to either. That's the thing. I've always been somebody who wants to know the truth. I want to have a relationship with God. I crave that desperately. And anytime I don't, I fill it with things that are bad, totally bad for me, And so that's what keeps me coming back to it. But it's one of those things that I kind of wear more like a loose garment.
Did you have that as your upbringing, or were you Albanian Orthodox, cradle Orthodox?
I was raised Albanian Muslim. And if you know anything about Albanians, we are Albanian first. And whatever other thing people have put on us through the centuries, we are second. So Islam was something that was forced on the Albanians in the, I think it was like after the 1450s because the Ottoman Empire was invading Europe, and we had our like national hero, who's a hero in Europe actually, George Castriati, or they're called Skender Bey, who fought off the Ottoman Empire kind of single-handedly. He was part of it. He was taken in by the Sultan, and he learned everything, and then he came back, and he was just unbelievable general, united the divided tribes of Albania, which did not get along at that time, and launched a formidable attack against the Ottoman Empire, such that he kept them out of Europe. And it's actually the only reason that the rest of Europe is not Muslim today, is because of him. And he's recognized throughout many of the countries. The issue is none of the other European countries wanted to go to war with him, wanted to back him up. And so after he died, his son was not able to keep up the same fortress against them. And so we were conquered by the Muslim Turks, and they forcibly converted everybody into Islam except for the people they couldn't reach to, who were in the mountains. And today, to this day, they're still Catholic, and we call them, mountain. The name for them is mountain people. Swords. And they tend to be Catholic, and we do have a bit of Orthodoxy. A smaller population is Orthodox Christian. And so the Albanians never really embraced Islam because of this, because it's almost historically have that resentment. But they are sort of just like, well, this is what we are. So we don't eat pork. And, once a year, some of us will fast. And then on the celebration of the breaking of the fast, we will drink our Albanian moonshine.
You mentioned hill people. Like in Tennessee, hill people is a totally different kind of. There's nothing Catholic about the hill people of Tennessee. It's more like mutants. And do you know what haints and boohags and boogers are?
No.
Okay, those are things to look up. I have in my notes here Albanian ? You guys are good at mafia and drugs. Is that true, or? You guys are really good at mafia. That's the only thing I've read about Albanians recently is Albanian mafia and skills at drugs.
Yeah, well, small percentage. They unfortunately fall into a huge crime syndicate. A lot of that
so my notes are correct. Okay.
Yeah, your notes are correct. A lot of that has to do with the communism that Albania became communist after the Second World War, which was quite an unfortunate development. And so that threw the country into abject poverty.
Is this Tito? Is this our Tito stuff?
No, Tito was great.
Actually,
people don't know a lot about Tito. Tito was a socialist leader, and he was the leader of Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia had different countries in it. Albania was not in it, but there were lands that were in these other countries that used to belong to Albania. So they're huge Albanian territories with huge Albanian populations, but it was not technically Albania. And this is to Americans, this geography lesson will put you to sleep. So I apologize.
No, it's okay. I remember reading about CIA operations in Albania many, many years ago. And I'm trying to remember. I know it was something related to Tito. I can't remember what the plan was, but it was something like aiding Marxists in opposition to Tito, ironically, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that might be true, because Tito was great. He actually had a period of huge prosperity for all those nations that were under him. And my mom tells me great things about him because she lived under his rule. But of course, when he died, you can't keep all those different cultures together. I mean, multiculturalism doesn't work, even when they're all white. So, But, I'll say the proportion of Albanians that do crime or are criminals is incredibly small. That's all that people know about.
I was just making a joke. I'm not.
No. But it's people don't know anything else about them. The vast majority of them, really disavow that kind of behavior and are morally righteous people. And their codes of moral righteousness are very difficult to break. Like they've got a couple of major codes for Albanians that are, if you break them, it's sort of just like, one of them is loyalty. And that is like, once they kind of give you their word and a word of trust, they kind of die with that. So it's like, if I ever say to you, like, I've got your back, and then something happens where it's like, push my back's to the wall, as an Albanian, I will feel the need to die for you. And it's kind of true. And it kind of got we can lead into how that got me into being banned at Mothership. And then the second thing is hospitality. Very, like, if you come into an Albanian's home, they're going to greet you with a tremendous amount of hospitality and make you feel welcome, because it's just part of the culture, you know. And so it's got a lot of old world values that I think people would appreciate.
Albanians got back. Got your back. My bad.
That's also true. A lot of Albanians do have that.
So are Albanians sassy? You seem to have some sass. Is that so? Your stand up is kind of sassy. Is that a normal Albanian female thing, or is it all Albanians?
No, that's New York. That's my New York.
Oh,
Yeah. Albanian women are pretty sweet and docile.
oh, really?
And yeah, they're more the traditional kind of feminine, like, you know, take the, though when they get older, they get real funny, you know, but sass and all that, I think that's kind of unique to, I get that from my grandmother. I get it from my dad. I get it from being a New Yorker, growing up in the Bronx, you know, my brothers, like I have 3 brothers and they constantly, there's a lot of roasting going on. So I think that's
so that was preparing you for the comedy world that you would eventually enter. So you were an actress, then you went to comedy, right?
Correct. I have no intention to ever do comedy.
And how did that come about?
Well, people just kept telling me I was funny. I was trying to write a script, and instead, what I ended up writing was a very funny web series because everything I wrote just kept coming out funny. And I used to teach these classes, and then I would go off into what I now recognize were bits, little bits that I would just go off on a tangent, and I had the class rolling, and people would come up to me. And literally, I think it was like 6 or 7 years that I had people go, "Do you do stand up? You should really think about doing stand up. Like, you're really well equipped for it." And I just thought, hey, buddy, I don't want to be poor. So why don't you get out of my face? I'm not going to be a poor, degenerate loser in a nightclub. Okay. Eventually, I just thought, all right, if everybody's telling me something, maybe I need to listen, and I'll go try it. And I did, and it was pretty much like a fish to water. And I was like, okay, I guess everybody saw something that I didn't see.
So now we fast forward, and I saw you on with Christy Mayer, and you guys were talking about a banning. You were talking about how you were attracted to the Austin scene. You thought, oh, well, this is going to be the haven of free speech. I'll be able to say what I want. So what's the story here? What happened?
So the Austin scene pretty much is a haven of free speech, but you have to realize we live in a climate where there's going to be limitations to that anyway.
Sure.
They're going to only let you go so far anyway. And so anybody who really wants free speech, like true free speech, you're going to have to build your own audience no matter what. That's just the way it is. And then pretty soon you're going to have to build your own platform because there's certain things you're just not going to be allowed to say, even if they're true. And that's the way it is. But I don't think that that's why the banning happened. I think the banning had my guess, because I haven't been told. My guess is that I got banned because I shared my friend Ty Rivera's video, and Ty Rivera he made a video raising some. He's an Austin comic. He's very funny. He's been here for about 20. He's been doing comedy for about 20 years. He's only been in Austin for about a year, and he was a regular at the Mothership, and then he started to notice that the way business was being done there, and this is not by Joe, but this is by some of the people that work for him that Joe trusts, and I don't think he realizes what's going on. So he started to notice that these people were not operating in a way that was to the benefit of the club, that they were doing things like putting up comics who weren't necessarily the best comics, but they were friends with them. They were starting to bully comics who they didn't consider cool and not let them into the club. And so he made this video to talk about this stuff. And because I agreed with some of the things he said, I found his video funny. I found it well edited. I shared it. I thought it was good. I wanted people to see it. And I guess that was enough for I don't know who at the club to say, this is what I think. Okay, this is just a wild guess, to say, okay, she's no longer allowed in here. But, to me, that was just sort of like the last, the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was getting so much animosity from some of the underlings in there who are threatened by me, don't like me, are not fans of my comedy, don't fuck with me for whatever reason. And there was always this sort of hostile environment that I had to kind of like fight through. And again, it wasn't everybody. I'm cool with most of the people that work there. Most of the people that work there love me. I think Joe himself would love my comedy. I think it's like right up his alley. I just don't think he had a chance to see it. But there were some people who are not free speech people, by the way. I don't know why they're there at Rogan's Club. They are not. These are typical. I know these people. I knew them before Rogan opened his club. I knew what they were about. Their character is not the character of free speech people. Their character is of snakes who try to use whatever avenue to maneuver their way to the top. And Joe's just happens to be the avenue now. And if you come in and you're any reason more talented than them or outspoken or going to tell the truth, you're a threat. And so there was always this sort of hostility from people like this. And I think they found me threatening and would talk to people in positions of power about me. And so when this happened, it was just enough to be like, that's enough. So I don't think it's like, oh, there was this one thing. I think it was, we already kind of just really don't want her around.
And do you think that's because of subject matter and the edgy stuff, or like rather it's more of an envy kind of keep these people out? They threaten our kind of status here, or both, or what do you think the main?
It's hard to say. My gut instinct says it's envy. It's being threatened. It's I don't care for your comedy kind of thing, which is fine. I don't care for a lot of people's comedy. You're totally entitled. Like comedians are the harshest critics of other comedians all the time. For all kinds of reasons. We're jealous, we're envious. We don't want anybody to be better than us. This is just normal, and I'm only 5 years in, but you would never know that if you were watching me. You would think I'd been doing it for 10 or 15 years because I have all this other experience that gives me I have a tremendous command of the stage and my stage presence, and I'm just not afraid, And so I think a lot of times when people find that out, it's sort of like, well, fuck you, like I have to do all this other stuff. And you think you're just going to take a shortcut. And I'm like, I have life experience, and you start later in life as a comedian. That life experience feeds your stage information. You know what I mean? So
you also, I saw you next to some dude. I don't know if he was a little soy man, but you look like you're about 7 feet tall. Is that part of the stage presence? Are you like super tall? I can't really tell.
I'm just under 5'9".
Okay.
And I usually wear heels. So okay. I will tower over them, and I will not apologize for towering over them.
Maybe that intimidates some of the dudes. They're scared of you, they think. Is it dudes? Is it other lady comedians that are that want to, you think, edge you out, or like little soy men or dudes, or who is it?
Both.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like a super competitive domain.
There's a lot of comedians here who really do support me. Like we're talking about less than 1% of the population, but those people just happen to be in the right position. 98% of the comedians here, maybe I'm being too nice. Let's say 90% of the comedians here I'm super cool with, and they love me. I get booked all over town. Like, why? That wouldn't be true if I wasn't funny, or people didn't like me, or they weren't cool with me, or if I was like a complete bitch or whatever. But I do know that I scare people. They tell me that all the time. So
you're that Albanian assassin mafia hit woman. That's what you got. That's the energy.
If you're not used to an East Coast personality, that's very normal. And that is a big part of it, right? Because a lot of these people came from LA. Everybody's so nice.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like the California transplant world in Austin.
So used to this political fakeness, show face. And I'm like New York. I'm like, I'm going to tell you to your face so you can do something about it. But you're going to be like, wow, she's such a bitch. I'm like, actually, I'm being really nice because I'm not going to say anything about you behind your back. I think that's mean.
Yeah, it's a different vibe in New York. It's pretty funny. We were talking to Sam Tripoli a few days ago. We were in Los Angeles for our event there, and he was talking about the competitiveness of sort of the domain of stand-up. Do you find it to be extremely super competitive, like no other? Like, what was more competitive, the actress world or the stand-up world?
I don't know. They're competitive in different ways. Because the actress world, like, you didn't have as much power over your own career. It really had to do with somebody
Like an
else.
agent or something.
Yeah, or like a casting director. And so you being kind of catty with another actress or whatever, that happened, but it was sort of like pointless because you couldn't do anything about whether the person liked you or not. Whereas stand up, it's so much on you and your shoulders and the kind of person you are and all this stuff. So there's a different level of competition that feels like almost like a kind of Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan vibe, where it's like, if I could just take you out, I'll have that position. It's like, if you take me out, you're still not going to be funny. That's not going to change
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
People
that
don't
makes
get
sense.
that. If you take funny people out, you actually hurt yourself. Because if you hurt the genre of comedy, if people come to comedy shows and they continually have a bad experience where they don't see funny, they don't go, oh, well, that person was the funniest out of the group, so I'm going to keep coming back. No, they just stop coming. You can be the funniest out of a group, but still be pretty bad, that they're just going to stop coming. You didn't give them an experience that makes them like want to come back and spend all this money again. So comedy is beneficial to everyone when you have funny people working.
Yeah, I thought you made an interesting point when you were talking to Christy Mayer too about maybe certain people who weren't ready for certain gigs, and then they were given those gigs, and instead of trying to better the comedy, this has happened with actually not just new-ish comedians, but even some veteran comedians. Then they then get mad at their audience, like, "Excuse me, you should have laughed at my jokes. I worked really hard." And so they're blaming the audience when it was like, you can't blame your audience if they're not laughing at your jokes. Like maybe your jokes suck, right? So there's this weird situation where people are acting like it's still the legacy system, where the system tells you who's funny and who you're supposed to laugh at, and it's like this is not going to work in the world of internet anymore.
That system's gone. People are gonna laugh at what's funny unless you're dealing with a brainwashed audience. I mean, I literally
Right.
just had a show the other night, Wednesday night, and I walked two guys. Now here was the funny thing, right? These two guys were gay, and they were at the top of my show, and I picked them out. I go, "Oh, you guys are gay, or whatever," and I'm like, "What's going on?" And being funny, and I got them to laugh at a couple of jokes, and then they even got madder that they were laughing at my jokes. They were freaking laughing at my jokes, and they were mad that I was making them laugh because the content was contradictory to their programming. So they got up and walked out while laughing at my joke. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you fags later. And then they got so mad, they started flicking me off and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry you don't have the testosterone to handle a joke. And the whole rest of the audience is laughing, right? Because it's funny. But that's the kind of thing that I'm like, yeah, then you can attack someone, because you're not really attacking the person. In that situation, you're attacking their programming, and you're trying to like pull it apart, like, hey, I'll do that when I have a joke that I know is a killer. I know a joke is a killer. I've done it tons of times. And if people don't laugh at that, then I know the crowd's the problem.
Yeah, that's yeah, we saw some of that. In fact, the last few days, where we, for whatever reason, we ended up at like 5 different comedy events, and I think at 2 of those events, people ended up walking out. They were mad, not at. Well, I was trying to be offensive, but I didn't actually cause anybody to. There was one dude in a wheelchair, which I made some Stephen Hawking jokes. I thought he was going to roll out, but he didn't end up rolling out. He stayed for it. But some other people actually made some people walk out. But have you had any other than that club, like the venues? Like, because we've had a few times where we almost got canceled by venues because we basically organize our own venues and whatnot. Have you had the venues kind of threaten you or worried that they were going to censor you, other than what you're talking about here in Austin?
Well, I'm always worried about that, but I try to let it go and go, well, what, when I started doing comedy, I made a decision. I said, I'm going to talk about everything I'm going to talk about, or I'm not going to do this. There's no point. Okay. I want to talk about everything I want to talk about, or I'm not going to do it, because why would I do this if I can't be free?
You know what? Yeah, go ahead. Well, one thing that brings to mind, it jibes with what you said earlier, is a lot of people don't talk about how cancel culture, yes, it's mind control, NPC, brainwashing, but I think also there's this element, a lot of people use it to go after their competition. So it's a tool.
1000%. 1,000%. Cancel culture is the seed of envy.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with people really being upset at you for what you said.
Yes.
They are deeply envious, and this is a fast track to dismantling you. And the idiocy of it is that they believe that if they take you down, they'll be able to take your place.
Right.
And it's like, you do not have the chops for it. That's why you're not in the place in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can't handle these situations, taking someone else down is not going to allow you to magically be in that position, because you're not qualified to actually do it. Right. I mean, that's the weird, but I think all like communist type ideology, it's all premised actually on greed and envy, which is ironic because you would, we're gonna make everybody equal, we're gonna redistribute everything, but actually it's not. Pulling everyone down really just makes everything bad. It doesn't actually.
Well, it's not ironic at all, because that is actually the true foundation of Marxist propaganda.
Yeah.
They just lie. Everything in Marxism is an inversion of the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the things that people don't realize. Like, that's the thing that I'm coming to more and more every time, is that we have all these ideas and ways to live that are presented to us as if they're good, and they sound really good on the surface of it. I mean, a lot of things, right? The multicultural push, the push for equality, the push for women's rights, they sound so good. And you think that you are doing good when you do them, but in fact, you are doing evil, and you are dismantling a functioning society and the way things work. And people don't understand this because they've bought the lie. And then also there's this emotional element to it that gets put together with the programming, with the ideology that says, this is what it means to be a good person. And if you don't believe this, you are a racist, you are a misogynist, you are a, homophobe or whatever. And they put these supercharged emotional terms that goes, and that's a bad person. And none of us identify as bad people. So we then go, yes, of course I'm a good person. Of course I believe this, right? And so now we are seeing the effects of that in fact, all of those philosophies lead to unbelievable amounts of evil and increased human suffering. And so those philosophies, in fact, and anybody who really abides by them, is truly the bad people. And that's what we have to start sort of deprogramming ourselves from, because it's very, very difficult to do, especially when you've had these kind of mantras put into your brain from a young age over and over and over again. You're muted.
That reminds me of this classic here. You almost had the phrase perfectly down.
Misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists. Anyway, that gets in my head and I'll start singing it all day long.
Where's that from?
It's just that. I don't even know. It's just a Hillary. It's the Hillary remix. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Leonarda, thank you for coming on. We had a great conversation. I loved all of your edgy, I don't give a crap, I'll say what I want vibe. I've got your channel here down below. People can go over here and check out. You did I thought this coffee shop skit was funny. I like that. I do some skits. You might want to check out my skits. I'm also a musician. I do some really awesome music. I'll send you some of that. But her channel is right there, Leonarda Jonie. She's also on Instagram. I'll have those links below. She's on Twitter. Those links will also be below. What are your upcoming dates? Where do people find you?
Yeah, so right now I am featuring for Quinn Dale, who's this fun comedian. You guys might know him online. He's a pretty edgy comic. So I'll be doing next week. I'm going to be in Salt Lake City on I can get the dates for you, Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And then let me give you these dates. I'll be in I'll be in Vegas and then LA. March 27th and 28th, I will be in Salt Lake City. April 5th and 6th, I will be in Dallas. April 8th through the 14th, I will be in Vegas. And then April 19th and 20th, I'll be in LA. And then I have a bunch of other stuff, so people can come. You can get tickets to those shows. I'll have a link on my if they go to my Instagram, Leonarda Jonie, Jonie. I'll have information there. So
do you roast? Do you do the roasts?
I have done the roasts, like roast battles.
Yeah, will you come back and I want to get roasted. Will you come back and bust some jokes on what you see?
Sure, I can do that. I like to write like a whole like long roast. I don't like roast battles. I think they get mean and evil. But I like a roast of, because it's more loving and friendly and just, you know, taking kind of cut downs of people.
What's the difference between a roast and a roast of?
Roast battle, you're going back and forth. You're like, I roast you, you roast me, and we're trying to win. We're doing it in front of a crowd, and they can get kind of, I don't know, I just don't like those.
They get pretty mean and like or your mom just died. Your mom just died, and I screwed her. You know, it's like, what?
That's what I'm saying, and it's kind of like, I don't like it. It's sort of a sinister energy there. So I've done a bunch of those, and I had like a 50-50 track record for winning. And then, but the roast of someone, usually it's like somebody you know or a friend or whatever. That's like what you saw on TV Central, like the roast.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah. Like the 15-minute roast of Bruce Willis. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I would invite you to roast me. I'd like to hear your cut downs. You can roast me. Anyway, thank you so much.
More of your.
Is that well, yeah, I guess you'd have to like see some of my stuff. You don't know anything about me, so I can. I know
a little bit. I've actually seen some of your debates, and I enjoy those a lot.
Okay, I'll send all the dirt on me over to you so that you can formulate your roast based on all the dirt. Thank you so much for coming on. A lot of fun talking to you, and enjoying what you put out. So appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.